All right, how's it going, y'all? So today we are going over how to install UniFi Protect. UniFi Protect is UniFi's security cameras, and they are really easy to set up, and in my opinion, probably some of the best out-of-the-box quality of any security cameras out there. And they're really easy to set up, manage, and just keep track of stuff. They have a great mobile app. UniFi is known for that. And we're going to be going over setting up a UniFi Protect system with this cool camera right here, which is called the AI Theta. This thing I have gotten to play with for a fair amount of time now, and it's a really cool camera. The idea behind it is for situations where you need a security camera, but you don't want to be putting a massive security camera in there because it's like a hotel lobby or something. It has decoupled the actual processing unit and power supply with the actual lens. So this guy is really simple. You're able to mount this somewhere in the ceiling tile and just have a very small, non-intrusive camera so that you can still have the full security on the lobby, but not have it just be sticking out. There's a ton of really cool ways to deploy it, and today we're just going to be using it to set up a UniFi Protect. The form factor allows it to be deployed in a lot of ways that otherwise you couldn't, and today we're going to be using it to show you how to fully deploy UniFi Protect. So today we're going over a complete Protect install guide, and we're going to be using that AI Theta, as well as a Gateway Max to actually go ahead and install it. For what you'll need to do this is obviously you need a camera, and now UniFi actually does include NVRs third-party cameras, so you can import old cameras a lot of time, but if you are buying and you have the budget for it, I do recommend buying UniFi cameras. They're just really solid quality and out of the box, really easy to manage. And the other thing you need is something to run the UniFi Protect application. So the UniFi Protect application is what records all the cameras as well as manages all of them and all that stuff. And there's a few different places you can run it. I'm gonna go grab my laptop and show you the different ones I would recommend. And it really comes down to how many devices you're going to deploy as well as what you already have. So UniFi Protect actually runs on a lot of devices UniFi has. And there's kind of two different paths you can go down, and it really depends on what your existing setup is and how many cameras you've got. So UniFi can actually run on the majority of their cloud gateways. So things like their Dream machines, the majority of theirs can run UniFi Protect and can do a certain number of cameras. So all of these can run Protect to a certain degree, save for the EFG, Cloud Gateway Ultra, Express 7, and I believe that is it. The way you can tell is you just click on a device, go in Technical, and see right here, can it run Protect? Now, that is an option if you're just going to be deploying a few cameras and if you've already got one of these things. So for me at my house, I'm running a Pro Max, and so I don't have that many cameras, so it's a no-brainer for me to just run it on there. But what I would recommend doing if you're going to do a larger deployment is check out this camera calculator, this capacity calculator right here, and really check out how many cameras you intend to deploy and see what it's going to do to your compute resources. If you're planning on running really heavy, a lot of applications, it's probably worth pulling the cameras off into their own section, and that would be running a standalone NVR. So this is the device that everything actually records to. Their NVR instant is pretty hard to beat, especially if you are doing a full deployment. It's got a really great price for that. So I would definitely take a look at that. It's got a built-in HDMI out. And then from there, it's just how many cameras do you want, and do you want rack mountable? If you start maxing out all the way up to the eNVR, then you can actually do a thing called stacking, where you can actually combine multiple of them together, but that's kind of out of the scope of this. But I would say it really kind of depends on what you're looking to do. They have a good filter option right here for how many cameras you plan to add, and it always comes down to how many cameras you want, how much other stuff you're doing, and also how long you want to retain the footage. And so definitely check out the capacity calculators right there. But today we're going to be doing this on a Cloud Gateway Max right here, which I've got set up in the rack ready to go with a 512 gig SSD. And so this is what I've got right here. So this is actually running both Protect and the actual network, so it's actually also operating as the router. The standalone NVRs do not operate as routers. So they don't manage your whole network and everything. They just record footage, so they can work with existing setups. So you've got like a pfSense network, you can still add these on in. But if you go with one of the cloud gateways, they are a router and they're not really set up to be just a Protect application. So right now we have my demo gateway Max right here. It's in the rack back there. And what we're going to do to start off is just install that Protect application. So I'm going to go ahead and install it. And I'm also going to show you what I've got set up. So this is what I've used in a bunch of other tutorials. And I have a special VLAN right here for cameras. And we're going to be using that special VLAN to basically isolate all of our cameras. This is useful for a couple of things. One, it just keeps everything isolated on out so you don't run out of DHCP leases, you don't have clients accidentally taking those IP addresses and all those other things. And it's also got a security implication because a lot of times you'll have exterior runs for cameras. And so by locking those ports to only be on that camera VLAN, if somebody goes in, pops the camera off, plugs into it, they don't have access to any of the rest of the network. It can also be useful in especially large deployments because you can start having specific paths, so specific connections that do not bottleneck the rest of the network. So all your camera traffic can go over specific cables. And that's useful when you've got really massive deployments because cameras are recording constantly. And so we have this camera VLAN set up, and I'm going to go and show you how to use it. The really important thing to know is that the IP address of all of our cameras, to do this right, should be 10.120.10.1. And that's really important to make sure that we actually use everything properly. So we'll want to make sure every single one of our devices using UniFi Protect, so all the cameras and any NVRs we have, all should have IP addresses that start with 10.120.10. And it's really up to whatever subnet you're on, but that's a huge check that a lot of people mess up, is they will adopt it when it's on the wrong subnet, and it's just a pain from there. But if you have it from the IP address originally, you never have any issues. And so let's go ahead and set that up. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to set this port. And so what you do for every port you're hooking up to, you want to make sure it is set to that camera VLAN. And that is as simple as clicking right here. And this right here is my uplink to my switch, but pretend it's just to my camera. And so all I'm going to do is for the native VLAN, I'm going to set it to cameras and block all other VLANs from it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take my AI Theta and go ahead and plug into it. And what I want to see is I want to see our AI Theta pop up with a 10.120.10 IP address. That way I know it is on the camera VLAN. And so the same thing would be true for my NVRs. Before I set up and configure my NVRs, I want to make sure they're all on that camera VLAN. And I generally loop Protect in with the actual access or the physical security stuff. I tend to loop that all into the same network because they run on the same things. So when I say cameras, I would also include things like door locks, which is personally how I always set it up because they're so similar and they run on the same hardware generally. All right, so it is ready. So I'm just going to go ahead and refresh that web page. And just like that, a quick refresh later, we can see that it has pulled that 10.120.10 IP address. And that's really important, especially if we're going to be having the NVR on that VLAN. We want to make sure they're all on that same VLAN so they can all just talk. And so then after that, we just go into UniFi Protect. And it should just show up and click to adopt. It's going to go ahead and adopt and do all of those things. And it's actually going to take us right into these smart detections. These are like AI detections, so it's actually finding specific people and can group by them and all of those other things. We're going to go ahead and enable them. And we can see my filming setup. Which is directly into the light, which is not the prettiest. I'm going to go ahead and mount this over in the side so we can actually have a better overall view of it and see how it actually works when we are in a better mount. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be better than this certainly. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and remounted the camera, and now it's got a much more useful view. You can see it is a massively wide view on here, and we can go through and actually look at all of our different settings for the recording and start choosing how we want to handle detections. So that's all going to be under this AI Theta. We select our camera, and now we've got a lot of options. So first off, it's got automatic, person, motion. All those detections have just been turned on by default when we enabled those smart detections. We can play around with our recording options, and they just really have solid defaults. If you want to be able to maintain footage for longer, the adaptive recording option is good for that. Essentially what it'll do is it will keep a low resolution when it's not really seeing much of anything, and then it'll bump the resolution up if motion is detected or anything like that. This right here is where you can kind of tune in your detections, and you can choose if you want to add in motion events. So essentially here, if it finds an AI detection, which is all of those things, hopefully there's not any license plates in my office, it will automatically create an event during that time. And you can choose how long to record before and how long to record after. So what it's doing here is it's storing events that are things that are more useful for you a significantly longer amount of time than just black footage of a room. And you do the same thing here with record motion events. You can also choose your FPS, compression, encoding. If you want to use H.265, which is a more advanced coding, you can use that. It's got a higher compression level. However, not all browsers will play it back, and you can choose what information you would like burned into the video and customize all of that. We can also go in and choose what not to detect. So let's say that there is a tree or a car that's always passing by. It's a busy road and you don't care if it records anything over there. What you can actually do is just cut that out of that recording area. And that is really useful if you don't want it to be just filling up all your detections with stuff that is quite honestly useless. There's also the same thing for smart zones and also crossing lines. So this is where if there is a place that nobody should be except maybe like security guards or whatever, you can actually create them. And so if somebody walks past there, it'll add in a detection. And you can also hard code privacy blackouts that just do not get recorded. So let's say over here there is a office and you want this camera to record everything, but you do not want to see what is behind that door. We can black it out entirely, and now that data will simply not be recorded. Finally, we can also just add in some additional tuning settings. The only time you ever really need to play around with the frequency setting is if you're finding interference with other lights. So now we can see this is the live view, and you can see I created that privacy blackout. We cannot see anything at all in there. So now let's say I want to get a push to my phone anytime there is a person detected. I'm going to come into the alarm manager, and this is where we can kind of handle anything that we want to. So if you look right here, out of the box is configured the majority of things you're going to want to care about. So right here, has a person been detected? If so, what do you want to do? You can either email it or also send a push notification to the phone. And we can also in-depth add in various things and say, hey, a person has been detected and also something else happened. There's a lot of various things you can do here, and you can really customize out however you want to send these notifications. They now have webhooks, so you can actually have it go all to an application server that you're running to actually manage all of this in your own application, however you want to work with it. There are tons and tons and tons of pieces here, and you can really customize it now to kind of whatever you need. So I'm going to go ahead and walk in there, and we should get some detections. So now we should get some detections. So you can see it started recording about 2 seconds before I added in there. That was from those settings. We can see that that blackout has been completely configured because we do not want to record what is in that office. And then we can either flag this to keep it long term, show the facial detections, and archive it. There's tons of stuff in here, and you can see it's all set up pretty easily by default. And if I wanted to, it also would have sent me a push notification to my phone. All right, and that's pretty much it. As you can see, UniFi Protect is pretty easy to set up and manage right out of the box, and their defaults tend to be really solid. If you have any other questions, put those down in the comments below. And if you want to hire me, there's a link for that down in the description below. And have a good one. Bye.